I never thought I'd live to see the day I'd be tossed out of my own house like yesterday's trash. But here I am, 73 years old, body frail from years of diabetes and chronic arthritis, sitting on a cracked bus stop bench with only a plastic bag of clothes and a heart full of betrayal. My name is Batu. I used to live in a quiet little home in Binjung that I and my late husband built from scratch. After he died, it was just me and my son Hung. When he got married, I welcomed his wife Lan with open arms. She was a quiet girl, at first sweet and respectful. But after Hung's sudden death in a car accident last year, everything changed. At first, Lan kept her distance, which I understood. Grief does strange things to people. But soon the coldness turned into resentment. She started treating me like I was a burden. She refused to speak to me unless it was to complain. She'd hide food in her room, turn the water heater off when she left so I couldn't bathe. I could handle that. I could endure silence and cold meals. But then one rainy afternoon she snapped. I had just finished mopping the kitchen floor with great effort, my knees aching when she came home and kicked the bucket aside, spilling water across the floor. "I didn't ask you to clean. You just make things worse," she yelled. I stood there leaning on my cane, speechless. "You should go live in a nursing home," she hissed. "This house isn't yours anymore." I reminded her the house was in my late husband's name. That's when she pulled out a document, some fake papers she claimed was proof the house was left to Hung and thus now hers. I could barely read it through the tears in my eyes, but she waved it like a sword. "Leave, now. I have nowhere to go." "Not my problem," she said, and threw my few belongings into a torn suitcase. I begged her. I cried. I even got on my knees. But she just stood there cold and unmoved. And so with my aching body and a shattered heart, I stepped out into the rain and down the front steps that I used to sweep every morning. It felt like I was floating in a bad dream. My slippers soaked my shawl clinging to my arms. My house, my garden, my memories all closed behind a wooden door slammed in my face. But as I wandered into the night, one thing burned in my chest more than the betrayal, the thought that maybe, just maybe, she hadn't read the fine print of what she thought she owned. The first night on the street was the longest of my life. I curled up on a stone bench under the awning of a closed tea shop, using my shawl as a makeshift blanket. My body throbbed with pain. My knees, my hips, even my fingers screamed with every movement. I was drenched to the bone, but what hurt more was the memory of Lan's face, so void of warmth, so eager to erase me. In the days that followed, I roamed from park to park. No one gave me more than a passing glance. People are quick to turn their heads from old age when it's covered in dirt and shame. I begged for food once, just once, and when the vendor swatted my hand away, I swore I'd never do it again. I scavenged instead. A half-eaten banh mi in the trash felt like a feast. I stopped looking at my reflection in store windows. I didn't recognize the woman staring back, hair-matted, lips cracked, and eyes sunken with despair. I kept to the shadows, only moving when the sun came out. Every night I slept somewhere new. Every morning I woke to the same thought. Why did she hate me so much? My illness worsened. My joints became stiff from the damp. One morning I woke up unable to move my left leg at all. I dragged myself to a wall and sat there dizzy, hungry, and helpless. I thought I might die there, and for a moment I welcomed it. But death didn't come. Instead, a small voice did. "Baoy, are you okay?" A young woman, maybe in her late 20s, stood over me holding a grocery bag in one hand and an umbrella in the other. She wore a bright blue blouse and had eyes that reminded me of my younger self, curious, kind, and a little stubborn. I tried to wave her off, but my hand trembled. "You need help," she insisted. "Come, my place isn't far." I wanted to protest. I didn't want to be a burden again, but my body had no strength left to argue. She helped me up, and though every step was agony, I followed her. Her name was Mai, and she lived in a tiny room above a tailor's shop. It smelled of lemongrass and fabric. She gave me warm rice porridge, clean clothes, and a dry bed. I cried the first night, not from sadness, but because I had forgotten what kindness felt like. Mai didn't ask questions. She simply said, Rest. We'll figure everything out tomorrow. As I lay in her narrow bed, warmth seeping back into my bones, I stared at the ceiling and let the quiet wrap around me like a soft blanket. It was the first time in weeks I had slept without fear, and it was in that silence, with the ache in my chest softening, that I remembered something Lan had clearly forgotten. The house, the will, my husband's final gift to me. In Mai's humble little room, I began to heal not just my body, but something deeper. The first week, I barely spoke. She didn't push. She simply made soup, changed my bandages, and gave me space to breathe. Every day she left early for work at the tailor shop and returned in the evening with a smile and warm food. One morning, as I watched her patch a customer's dye by the window, I found the courage to ask, "Why are you helping me?" She looked up surprised. "Because someone once helped my grandmother when no one else would. I guess now it's my turn." I nodded, blinking back tears. My health improved slowly. The swelling in my joints eased, and I could walk without collapsing. With strength returning, so did my memory, and so did the quiet fire inside me. I thought back to the day Lon threw me out, her arrogance, her certainty. That fake document she waved in my face. She was so sure of her control. But there was something she didn't know. Years ago, after my husband fell ill, we had visited a notary to update our will. He insisted the house remain in my name entirely, even in the event of his death. "This is for you," he told me. "In case something happens to me, you'll still have shelter." At the time, I didn't question it. I had the document sealed and stored it inside the lining of an old wooden jewelry box locked in the bottom drawer of my closet. Hung had known, but I never mentioned it to Lan. After his death, she must have assumed everything belonged to him. That's when she forged the paper betting on my weakness and my silence. But the real will, the legal one, still existed. "Mai," I said one evening as she placed a blanket over my knees, "I need to go back. There's something I must retrieve." She frowned. "Back to your house?" I nodded. "There's a box in my old room. If it's still there, I can prove everything." She looked uncertain, but eventually agreed. "We'll go early. I'll help." The next morning, we borrowed her friend's motorbike and headed back to the neighborhood I once called home. My heart pounded as we turned the corner onto the familiar street. There it was, my house. My garden, though overgrown, my gate rusted and covered in new locks. Lan wasn't home. We snuck around to the back where the old wooden window to my room had always been loose. And just as I remembered, it still was. With a bit of effort, Mai pushed it open. We slipped in quietly. The room was dusty, but the furniture remained. I dropped to my knees and reached into the bottom drawer. I fumbled with the loose panel. My fingers found the notch, and then there it was. The box, untouched. Inside, beneath my old wedding ring and a faded photo of Hung, lay the document that could turn everything around. Lan thought she had erased me. She had no idea I was about to rewrite the ending. I held the will in my trembling hands, the paper yellowed at the edges, but perfectly intact. Mai's eyes widened as she read over my shoulder, lips parting slightly as the realization sank in. "This says the house is yours," she whispered. I nodded slowly, and it always has been. The next few days passed in a blur. Mai helped me contact a lawyer through a local community legal center. The woman assigned to me, Miss Knock, was sharp, calm, and most importantly, believed me. "This document is valid," she confirmed after reviewing it. "And if your daughter-in-law is residing there under false pretenses with a forged document, we can take legal action." It felt surreal. Just a week ago, I was sleeping on concrete. Now I was reclaiming what was rightfully mine. We moved carefully. Ms. Knock filed a claim and requested a copy of the forged paper Lon had used, which we obtained through the local notary office. As expected, the signature was fake. My husband's handwriting was easy to distinguish, especially after living with him for over 40 years. Once we had everything, the letter was drafted and delivered. I chose not to deliver it myself. I didn't want to see her face yet. Instead, Lon received a hand-delivered legal notice on a Tuesday afternoon informing her that she had 7 days to vacate the premises or face formal eviction charges. According to the will, not only was the house mine, but she had no legal grounds to alter or transfer its ownership. The morning after she received it, Mai's phone actually rang. It was Lon. She didn't even greet me, just snapped, "How dare you do this to me?" I stayed calm. "You did this to yourself. I gave you a place to stay. You threw me into the street." There was silence on the line. Then she muttered something about lawyers and court and how I wouldn't win. But her voice shook. "I already won, Lon," I said quietly. "You just didn't know it." And I hung up. The next week, I didn't return to the house. I let the system handle her. I didn't want revenge served loud and messy. I wanted it cold and final. When the lawyer called to confirm Lon had moved out, I didn't feel triumph. I felt closure. But there was one thing left to do. I returned to the house a week later, this time through the front door. The place was a mess. Furniture overturned, kitchen drawers emptied, even the curtains torn down. She had tried to hurt me one last time, but all she had done was remove the shadows from the corners. I stood in the doorway of my old bedroom, ran my hand along the windowsill, and whispered, "I'm home." And for the first time in months, I wasn't afraid anymore. I moved back into the house slowly, one bag at a time, with my helping me clean each room. We scrubbed the walls, opened the windows wide, and burned lemongrass to chase away the stale air and the memory of her. At night, I sat in the garden I once tended daily, now wild and overgrown. As I plucked weeds and trimmed branches, I felt the weight of my grief, of everything Lon had tried to erase. But beneath that pain was something stronger purpose. I had not come back just to survive. I came back to reclaim what she thought I didn't deserve. Then one evening she returned. I had just finished watering the orchids when I heard the gate creak open. I turned, and there she was, Lan, standing in the same spot where she had once thrown me out like a sack of garbage. Her face was thin, her clothes wrinkled, and her expression a strange mix of anger and desperation. "What do you want?" I asked, calm but firm. I didn't think you'd actually come back," she muttered, eyes darting to the house. "It was always mine," I said. "You just lived here for a while." She stepped forward. "I made a mistake." I said nothing. "I was grieving. I wasn't thinking straight." "You were cruel. Don't call it grief." She bit her lip. "I don't have anywhere to go." I let her words hang in the air. A few months ago, that sentence would have shattered me. Now it only echoed what she had said to me when she slammed the door in my face. I walked over to her, slowly leaning on my cane. "Do you remember the day you threw me out? You didn't even look at me when I begged. You said it wasn't your problem." Her eyes welled up. "I know. You forged a paper to steal from an old woman, my son's mother. Do you know what that means?" Tears slid down her cheeks. "Please, just a few days. I'll find somewhere else." And in that moment, I saw her not as a monster, but as a broken person. Still, forgiveness wasn't mine to give, not yet. Actions had consequences, and she hadn't begun to pay for hers. "No," I said, voice steady. "You'll leave now." I turned and walked back toward the house. "I'm sorry," she cried out behind me. "I was wrong." But I didn't turn around, because regret is easy when your schemes fall apart. I closed the door, locked it, and this time I was the one on the inside. Life after Lan's departure was quiet but not empty. The first few weeks were spent restoring the home, not just cleaning, but breathing life back into every room. I continued to visit after work, sometimes staying for dinner. We laughed over stories from my youth, and she taught me how to use a smartphone. I even made a Facebook account, though I mostly used it to look at old photos of Hung. Grief still lingered. I would never stop missing my son. But for the first time in a long while, I felt safe. I felt whole. I was no longer a forgotten widow left to rot in silence. I was a woman who had survived betrayal, illness, and the streets, and returned with dignity intact. Word about what happened spread through the neighborhood. Old friends and neighbors who had kept their distance while Lon lived here now began to reappear. Some came with bags of rice or mangoes from their garden. Others simply came to sit and talk. They said they thought I'd moved away. I didn't correct them. I just smiled. Then one morning I received a letter from Lon. It was handwritten, her penmanship, uneven, smeared in places, as if she'd been crying while writing it. She apologized, said she was staying with a distant aunt in another province, trying to start over. She admitted she had acted out of fear and greed, but also bitterness, blaming me for Hung's death, for being the last one left. I read it twice, and then I tucked it away in the drawer beside my bed, unopened ever since. Forgiveness is complicated. It's not something I could give just because she asked. It had to be earned not for my sake, but for her own soul. I didn't hate her anymore, but I didn't want her near me either. One rainy afternoon, as I sat by the window with a cup of warm tea, I looked around my home and felt something I never expected: peace. The storm outside roared and raged, but inside I was steady. Mai stopped by that evening with a new blanket she had sewn herself. "Looks like this place has a second life," she said, smiling. "So do I replied gently, folding the blanket. Later that night I stood once more in the garden. The orchids had bloomed again, soft purple petals dancing in the breeze. I touched one and whispered, "We're still here," and that was enough. If my story teaches you anything, let it be this: silence doesn't mean weakness, and age does not strip you of worth. I was betrayed by someone I once called family, thrown out of my home during the weakest time of my life. But even in the coldest nights, I held on to a small ember of truth, and that truth saved me. To those who are growing old, protect what is yours. Put your name on the deed. Keep your papers safe. But more than that, keep your dignity closer than anything else. And to the young, never mistake someone's frailty for powerlessness. The very people you cast aside may be the ones who once carried you. In the end, kindness is remembered, cruelty is repaid. I lost my son, but I found my voice. I lost my home, but I reclaimed my name. And now I live not with anger, but with the peace that comes when justice is quietly served.